Deputy Healy.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. First of all, to apologise for my late arrival. I was taking leaders' questions in the chamber, and to welcome the Nazareth representatives and the people in the public gallery, and particularly, I suppose, the McQuillan family from Drogheda, and to sympathise with them in their sad loss. Just a few questions in relation to the ambulance service nationally. In the number of staff, how do we compare, say, staff-wise? And you may have answered this now already, but as I say, I was late attending. But how do we compare with other jurisdictions in relation to the actual number of staff? The number of vehicles, you've obviously given the details on that, and I wonder as well in relation to the condition of vehicles and the question of fit for purpose, and also is there a difference in the rostering or the need for both staff, additional staff or ambulances for different types of terrain, if a particular ambulance base is on a motorway or a national primary road, or covering, say, very rural hilly areas and that sort of thing. And just to ask for a comment from you on the whole question of how the cutbacks have affected the ambulance services. Now, where I come from in South Tipperary, my understanding of the situation is that there's very significant effects arising from the cutbacks. For instance, there's 3 ambulance stations in South Tipperary. And you find on an ongoing basis, and this is not a once-off or once a week at all, but on an ongoing daily basis, you have South Tipperary ambulances covering Kilkenny, covering Carlow, covering Wexford, New Ross, covering Waterford, covering Dungarvan, because Dungarvan are pulled to cover Youghal, which has lost an ambulance. And there are now proposals for reducing the ambulance coverage in South Tipperary, effectively to give coverage to other areas which have been affected by the cutbacks. And I wonder if you would agree with me that is the case, and do you find that in other areas throughout the country? Because it certainly appears to me that the various cuts that have taken place have affected the service to the extent that you're now robbing Peter to pay Paul on an ongoing basis. And I'd like particularly if you would deal with that for me, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Dixon. Or Mr. Gray, whichever you want to start back.
Chairman, we may cover some of the questions in the first response, etc. So, and it's a wide and varied questionnaire list that we have to respond to. So we may get over 1 or 2 of the points in previous questions that have been asked. And if we miss something, if you prompt us, we'll respond if we have that opportunity, Chairman. And I believe we have 15 minutes to respond, if that would be correct.
Okay.
Okay, if I could deal with the first 2. Just to offer clarity in relation to HICA response times. HICA response times are clear. It's 7 minutes and 59 seconds for a life-threatening call. That means that the ambulance must arrive, or the rapid response vehicle must arrive, or the community first responder must arrive in 7 minutes and 59 seconds. And there appears to be some confusion at corporate level in relation to the understanding of those particular times. As recently as just last week in the Northeast, when a rapid response vehicle responded to a call at St. Joseph's School in Drogheda. Apparently the rapid response vehicle went through the wrong school because there were 2 of the same name. The interesting part in relation to the response by the HSE was that The patient wasn't suffering from a life-threatening incident or life-threatening case or life-threatening injury, and therefore didn't fall within the category of response time of 18 minutes and 59 seconds. That statement is incorrect, and it demonstrates a lack of understanding, I think, at some level within the HSE with regard to response times. They are international best practice, and they're quite clear and they're quite specific. It's not 8 minutes and it's not 19 minutes. It's a second below those times because they have been established and recognised as international practice. There is a level of confusion in relation to the response time of the ambulance. A community first responder can respond to a life-threatening emergency once they have the basic life support training done and are registered with the Pre-Hospital Emergency Care Council. And that can be a community first responder, a volunteer from within the community. The first responder can also be a rapid response vehicle, which is usually a car or a jeep or a motorcycle. A first responder can also be an ambulance, the traditional ambulance that we're all familiar with, the two paramedics, the equipment, and the ability to take the patient or transport the patients to the hospital. At some level, it has been put out there that in life-threatening emergencies, there is this perception that the ambulance doesn't have to arrive until 18 minutes and 59 seconds. That is only when the ambulance is the second responder. In the first instance, if any of those three are given the call as a first responder, in other words, they get the call first, they have to expect it to arrive first, and they are expected to deliver care first. That is the ingredients of a first responder. If the ambulance gets the call as a first responder in the first instance, it has to be there in 7 minutes and 59 seconds. The only time the ambulance would be excused from those indicators, that particular indicator of 7 minutes and 59 seconds, is if the ambulance is the second responder and is deployed in support of an already deployed first responder. So I hope that offers clarity in relation to the KPIs with regard to the responsibility of the ambulance and the 7 minutes and 59 seconds and the 18 and 59 seconds. In relation to RRVs, the rapid response vehicles and the other jurisdictions which we draw comparisons to are at pains to point out that the rapid response vehicles were introduced into the system to enhance or complement the already existing deployment model of ambulance service provision, which is the traditional ambulance that we're used to, two paramedics, all of the equipment, the stretcher, and we can take the patients to hospital. The rapid response vehicle is manned by one paramedic or advanced paramedic deployed by the ambulance service to a scene, and it should more or less be a parallel response. The rapid response vehicles now are being used as an alternative to ambulance response. So, for example, if and Deputy Kelleher referred to an unofficial policy in relation to ambulances being dropped, etc. If an individual turns up to work or doesn't turn up to work who is injured or ill, and we have one paramedic, the ambulance is taken out of the system. So the ambulance is gone, and the paramedic that does turn up for work is deployed onto the rapid response vehicle. So we effectively take the ambulance out of the system, and the rapid response vehicle is used as an alternative. So now we're down the ambulance resource. And that is a policy that has been, that the National Ambulance Service have engaged nationally. In relation to the management of pressures that are being experienced by paramedics, the pressures have been recognised, the impact of those pressures have been recognised, and concerns have been raised to the ambulance service by the HSC occupational health departments, and also the critical incident stress management group, the psychology people who deal with the impact of events on paramedics. And concerns have been raised in both of those departments with regard to the impact of the pressures on paramedics now today. Some of of the committee may be familiar with the Bob Clark report, which was a report that was introduced or concluded in 1993. And Bob Clark at that time described the relationship between the ambulance service management and the staff at best as being hostile. I would suggest that that is probably the case now at the moment. In one station alone, in relation to the shifts, the rapid response vehicles being used as an alternative. In one station in Dublin alone, in St James's, there has been 186 shifts dropped to year-end 2013. It would be worth pointing out that this particular strategy includes the closure of ambulance stations alternatively, where, for example, in Dublin and Kildare, there is a shift in Swords which wouldn't be covered on a Tuesday, a shift in Tala which wouldn't be covered on a Monday, and a shift in Maynooth which wouldn't be covered on a Wednesday. So those shifts are actually dropped in out of the system. And the relief staff are actually brought in to cover those shifts that would normally be rostered by the staff on that particular roster. But due to the Haddington Road, in terms of going from 40 hours down to 39 hours, we lost those extra shifts. The impact of that is that the staff that we have to cover short-term or long-term absences due to illness or injury are now being soaked up to provide the minimum level of cover that we normally had rostered prior to Haddington Road. That again influences the decision to use the rapid response vehicles as an alternative, because we don't have the relief staff to step in to cover for somebody who is ill and injured. And so, emanating from that, the ambulance is removed out of the system, and the rapid response vehicle then is used as an alternative. The downgrading of Ennis in Clare, I think Deputy Keller, somebody referred to Ennis. The situation in Ennis would be similar in terms of the proposal in Ennis now is that they will deploy the same system as has been established in Dublin in the 3 stations that we've just mentioned. The proposal is that in Ennis there's 4 stations. There's Scariff, there is Ennis-Tynan, there's Ennis, and there's Kilrush. There's 1 ambulance in all of the stations, except in Ennis there's 3. The proposal is that they will close down one of the other 3 stations for 12 hours alternatively. And of the 3 ambulances in Ennis, 1 of them will be deployed to cover those days of closure. That again minimises the level of resource in terms of deployment to what it is now. In an area where, as far as we can establish, response times to AS1 calls are 50-50. We get to 50% of them on time and 50% of them beyond the time. I think 50% of AS1 or life-threatening emergencies in that region in the West, we only reach in 50% of cases. And what we're proposing over there is that we reduce the level of resources in that particular area, such as Clare.
1 minute,
The response times, we believe that response times can be achieved. Response times are unrealistic due to the level of resources that we have and due to the proposals in terms of changes such as we have demonstrated in those areas. However, they are a reality. We need to reach them. What we do not accept is that 75% or 85% of calls can be collateral damage. We would expect that everybody has a right to an ambulance within the parameters of those time frames 100% of the time. The collateral damage in terms of people who don't survive beyond that 85% hit is unacceptable. The role of paramedics, yes, has changed. We now deliver care and are guided by the Pre-Hospital Emergency Care Council. And as we have stated in our submission, we have gone from essentially delivering breakfasts in ambulances to hospital, from hospital kitchens to wards, to now delivering world-class, best international practice clinical intervention at the scene. I think Michael will respond then to the rest of the members of the council, please. Thank you, Chairman.
I think we've covered most of everything, I think, in your answers, but there is a few things, I suppose, that we have to be mindful of, is that what we're dealing with here is people's lives. And people's lives, as we've seen over the last 12 months, have been lost. And there's no way at any stage that we can contribute this either to the ambulance service or obviously to the incidents that happened. But one of the most important things is that when we look at the bigger picture of the reconstruction of the hospital network and the changes that are being brought around, if it's to advance the service, one of the things that has been very much highlighted is the closure of local A&Es and smaller hospitals in counties and so forth. These are a vital cog in the provision of care because they're centres of definitive care. They have the X-ray, they have the doctors on scene, they have the surgeries. If you remove them, you're removing a very critical part of emergency care. And one of them things is that if the reconfiguration is designed to be as best practice, and what we have then is centres of excellence, the longer distances that we have to travel creates bigger gaps in the system. And the only way that we can secure that and secure them gaps is by further investment into the ambulance service. And one of the provisions that we did look for, and we spoke to other people about this, is quite simply that the savings that are made in this reconfiguration of closures of smaller A&E departments should be invested into the ambulance service. That's the conduit. That's the health service as it stands. Paramedics are at the front line. They're first on scene, and they require the support of you people here. They require the support of the health service executive in order giving the general public the service that it requires.
Margaret? Okay.
Thanks very much.
So, can I just thank you, Michael and Tony, for being here this afternoon and for making your presentation.